Have you ever paused to wonder what Radagast whispers to the winds as he wanders the deep forests of Middle-earth, where the mist curls languidly over the Anduin and the stars glimmer like scattered gems above Rivendell, and echoes of ancient Khazad-dûm halls hum faintly in the night? You step softly on moss-covered roots, the earthy scent of pine and damp stone filling your senses, and you realize just how perilous it is to walk these woods alone. You probably wouldn't survive this, not without the careful guidance of an experienced wizard or a wary woodland creature at your side. Somewhere far above, an owl hoots, and the rustle of small creatures scurrying through undergrowth reminds you that life continues in quiet, unnoticed rhythms. The dwarves would call it the Song of the Living Stone, though no songbook records it, and some scholars still argue whether Radagast's conversations with birds and beasts were magical guidance or simply eccentric companionship. You follow the twisting paths, imagining the gold-tinted leaves drifting lazily into hidden pools, the way light glances off rippling streams, and the distant cry of a stag echoing between the trunks. Every sound is heightened in the calm of twilight, every shadow a story waiting to be told. Humor dances lightly here too. You imagine a hedgehog carrying a tiny axe, or a squirrel debating with a frog about who would inherit Mirkwood if elves left, a joke dwarves might laugh at, but few others would understand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As you pause, you can almost hear Radagast chuckling at his own oddities, pondering over forgotten herbs and hidden hollows, while you, like a careful student of lore, lean in to catch every whispered secret. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The lonely mountain rises ahead, a silent sentinel against the twilight sky, its jagged peaks catching the last glimmers of sun before the darkness fully settles. And you feel the weight of centuries pressing down as you step closer to Erebor's shadow, imagining the glittering treasure that once lured dragons and dwarves alike into both glory and ruin. The air is crisp with the scent of stone and distant pine, and every footfall echoes softly against the rocky slopes, a rhythm that seems almost musical in the stillness. You trace the ancient carvings etched into the mountain's base, runes worn smooth by time, and wonder at the craftsmanship that dwarves perfected long before men even dreamed of kingdoms. There's a forgotten tidbit here that even some scholars dispute, a record of secret tunnels lined with mithril dust, their existence debated for generations. Birds circle overhead, their shadows flitting like tiny dancers across the rugged terrain, and you imagine Thorin Oakenshield pacing these slopes as a young prince, fire in his eyes, axes swinging, hammers raised, his pride as tangible as the mountain itself. Even as the mountain seems to whisper cautions, he is too proud to heed. Humor drifts lightly through your mind, perhaps a bat hanging upside down with a tiny crown, or a goblin mistaking a squirrel for a spy. Little moments that break the tension of impending adventure and would earn a soft chuckle from Bilbo if he were watching. The path narrows, roots twisting like ancient fingers, and your senses are heightened as if the mountain itself is testing your resolve, while distant echoes carry the songs of dwarves long past, their voices mixing with the rustle of leaves and the whisper of wind in ways both poetic and eerie. Every step brings you closer to history and legend intertwined, and you feel the thrill of being part of a tale older than most mortals could ever comprehend, aware that each choice, each glance, could alter the perception of Middle-earth's living story. Thorin's early fires and shadows emerge as you follow him through the echoing halls of Erebor, where the glow of forge fires casts long, dancing shapes against the walls of stone, and you can almost feel the heat radiating from the bellows as dwarves hammer at anvils, sparks leaping into the air like fleeting stars. You walk alongside the young heir of Durin's line, noting the meticulous care with which he examines each strike, each glowing metal sheet, the precision of dwarven craftsmanship that has been honed over countless generations, a skill so intricate that even the elves occasionally pause to admire it in awe. though they would never admit it aloud. The scent of molten metal, mingled with the earthy aroma of carved stone, fills your senses, and somewhere beneath the rhythmic clang of hammer against steel, you detect the quiet murmurs of dwarves recounting old songs, the ballads of ancestors who delved into darkness and came back with tales of courage, cunning, and occasionally spectacular mishaps. One can almost imagine a goblin tripping over its own feet while fleeing the tunnels, a moment of levity, even in the shadow of peril. Scholars still debate whether Thorin's early obsession with the Arkenstone, which glimmered faintly in his thoughts even as a youth, was driven by an innate sense of duty or by a deep-seated pride inherited from Durin himself, a question that colors every retelling of these formative years. You notice how the young prince's eyes light up when discussing axes, hammers, and the tempering of steel, each tool imbued with both functionality and artistry. And it becomes clear that the weaponry is more than mere implements of war. They are symbols, repositories of ancestral memory, keys to a legacy as enduring as the mountains themselves. Humor, subtle and dwarven, creeps into your imagination. Perhaps an apprentice accidentally welding his boot to a miniature anvil, or a talking raven offering unsolicited critiques on the symmetry of a battle axe. Jokes that would earn only a knowing smirk from Thorin himself. The corridors you traverse are lined with tapestries depicting scenes of both triumph and folly. Dwarves wrestling trolls, feasting with unexpected guests, singing songs that stretch into the wee hours. The images ripple with movement as the flickering light of torches and fires plays across them, lending the stone walls a living quality that seems almost enchanted. You pause at a particularly intricate mosaic, noticing the subtle inlay of mithril dust that catches even the faintest glimmer of torchlight, a technique so rare that only a handful of dwarven smiths could replicate it, and you reflect on the forgotten tidbit that Thorin himself once carried a small vial of this dust, a talisman from his ancestors, during long journeys through Mirkwood, believing it would protect him from unseen dangers. The conversations around you shift seamlessly from tactics to song, from lore to speculation, and you overhear debates among the dwarves about the true lineage of certain heirlooms, their discussions filled with passion and precision. One elder insists that a particular axe belonged to Thror himself, while another argues that the weapon was misattributed during the last Great Migration, a dispute that has persisted in scholarly circles for decades. Your gaze moves upward to the rafters, where bats flit silently, and for a moment you imagine them whispering dwarvish secrets to one another in the dark, plotting mischievous diversions to test the young prince's patience, adding a gentle levity to the otherwise solemn atmosphere. As you continue walking, the corridors open into a spacious hall, where Thorin pauses, hands resting on the edge of a carved stone railing, eyes fixed on the distant mountains, imagining the conquests yet to come and the battles that will define his name. The air here is heavy with anticipation and the faint scent of lingering smoke, each breath a reminder of the interplay between courage and pride. You notice how his companions move around him with a mixture of respect and camaraderie, their interactions a tapestry of trust, jest, and occasional mild exasperation at Thorin's insistence on exacting perfection, and you smile at the thought of Bilbo quietly chuckling at a dwarven argument over the exact angle of a hammer swing, a subtle, almost imperceptible joke that lightens the weight of impending adventure. The deeper you move into the hall, the more you sense the tension between youthful ambition and the shadows of legacy, the way the ancient stones seem to absorb and reflect both triumph and folly, a duality that will follow Thorin throughout his life. Scholars debate whether this environment fostered his courage or subtly fed the pride that would later challenge his wisdom. Songs rise softly from the apprentices working in hidden corners, their voices tentative but growing with confidence, creating a delicate harmony with the clang of hammer and the whisper of air through narrow shafts. The melodies tell tales of dwarves lost and found, of treasure hidden in dark crevices, of laughter echoing in long-forgotten chambers, and for a fleeting moment, you feel the entirety of dwarven history pulsing in rhythm with the young prince's heartbeat. The shadows shift as torches flicker, revealing carvings of dragons and long-departed kings, their expressions frozen in the stone, yet somehow alive under the dance of firelight, reminding you that every legend carries with it a measure of caution, a story of hubris, courage, and unexpected folly, all intertwined. As you step back, absorbing the scene in its entirety, you realize that you are walking not merely through halls of stone, but through a living chronicle of heritage, ambition, and the subtle interplay of humor and gravitas that defines Thorin Oakenshield's early life, each moment rich with texture, sound, and the faint, almost imperceptible hum of destiny awaiting its moment to unfold. Encounters beyond the misty paths begin as you tread cautiously along the edge of Mirkwood, where the thick canopy overhead allows only scattered shafts of pale light to pierce the gloom, and the air carries the damp, earthy scent of moss and decaying leaves, mingling with the faint perfume of wildflowers struggling to bloom in the shadow of towering oaks. Every rustle of undergrowth and snap of twig sets your senses on alert, for here, in the liminal spaces between shadow and illumination, creatures both mundane and magical stir, glimpses of their forms fleeting yet compelling. A fox with amber eyes that seem to hold ancient knowledge, or a bird whose song carries a melody strange yet hauntingly familiar, as if recounting tales older than the mountains themselves. You note the delicate balance of light and shadow, where sunbeams catch the edges of ferns and spiderwebs, creating a glimmering lattice that dazzles the eyes and tugs at memory. And you realize that even the scholars who study Middle-earth disagree on the exact magical properties of these woods. Some claim they protect travelers, others insist the forest tests intruders, measuring courage and wisdom alike. Thorin Oakenshield himself, in these early wanderings, senses the weight of such encounters, his eyes keen for both threat and opportunity, his instincts honed by tales of dwarves who lost their way to trickery or to the subtle, playful interventions of woodland spirits who are neither fully good nor fully evil. And you imagine him exchanging wry, almost imperceptible smiles with Bilbo at moments when danger masks itself as folly, a goblin tripping over its own feet, a squirrel hoarding not nuts, but tiny, glittering stones, as if mocking dwarven greed. Humor flickers in these darkened spaces. Perhaps a deer pauses to bow courteously before scampering off, or an owl perches on a branch, shaking its head at your cautious movements, as if bemused by mortal timidity. Such moments lighten the oppressive majesty of the forest, allowing you to breathe even as tension coils around every shadow. The path curves, leading you past ancient ruins hidden beneath the forest's embrace, moss-covered stones etched with runes long forgotten, their meanings disputed by linguists and historians alike. One argues they mark the burial sites of early dwarves. Another insists they are protective charms left by elves. And yet a third contends they were inscribed merely to amuse travelers who might wander too far into the gloom. You feel the interplay of history and legend pressing against your senses, as if each leaf and stone carries a memory, an echo of choices long made, battles won and lost, and quiet moments of reflection, while the distant hum of a waterfall and the soft chatter of unseen birds form a delicate counterpoint to the occasional creak of ancient roots bending under their own weight. Thorin's movements are deliberate, his awareness spanning both the immediate surroundings and the layered tapestry of Middle-earth's hidden histories. You sense that he interprets each encounter as both a challenge and a lesson, aware that even the smallest creature might teach wisdom, courage, or humility. A forgotten tidbit drifts to your mind, that certain mushrooms here, when crushed, release spores that emit a soft phosphorescent glow, an effect that dwarves historically used to navigate dark tunnels without fire, though some scholars still debate whether such knowledge was common or reserved for the most skilled artisans. Your journey continues, weaving between ancient trees and hidden clearings where sunlight glances off trickling streams, and you pause to hear the wind teasing the tops of the tallest oaks, carrying whispers that might be warnings, guidance, or mere coincidence, leaving you to interpret meaning as you will. Humor intertwines subtly with the atmosphere. A rabbit, bold and absurdly confident, hops into your path as if to challenge your authority, or a fallen branch balances precariously, making you stumble in a silent, almost mischievous jest. Reminders that life persists in quiet resilience, and that even in a forest shadowed by legend, levity endures. The tension of anticipation and the allure of mystery combine as you advance toward hidden glades where light filters like liquid gold, revealing flowers and vines of exquisite detail, some bearing fruit that seems impossibly perfect, as if painted by hands of the Valar themselves. And you marvel at the delicate artistry of nature, a lesson in both beauty and patience. Scholars continue to debate whether these woods are inherently sentient, subtly influencing travelers' decisions, or whether perception and legend have amplified natural phenomena into myth. The truth remains tantalizingly out of reach, a secret kept by trees and the wind. You notice Thorin's reactions to these wonders, the way he pauses, examines, and absorbs every detail, balancing his natural pride with the humility demanded by such encounters. Understanding that true leadership requires not only strength of arm, but attentiveness to the quiet, often overlooked rhythms of the world. As the forest opens to reveal distant hills and the faint sparkle of a hidden stream, you sense the deep, persistent pulse of Middle-earth, alive with magic, history, and the eternal dance of shadow and light. A living canvas upon which each step you take adds a new brushstroke to the ongoing story. The battle of wits and weapons unfolds as you follow Thorin through corridors of stone and shadowed halls, where the faint glimmer of torchlight dances across axes, hammers, and shields, carefully arranged in disciplined symmetry, each instrument of dwarven craft bearing both function and the weight of legacy. You feel the subtle tremor of anticipation in the air, as if the walls themselves are aware of the cunning maneuvers and silent strategies playing out in the quiet moments before open conflict. You notice the meticulous attention with which Thorin plans his steps, weighing each decision against both immediate danger and the long arc of reputation and honor, the very principles that have guided Durin's line for generations. And you almost hear the whispered counsel of ancestors echoing through the stone, debating the merits of prudence versus daring action. Humor threads lightly through the tension. A pair of mischievous apprentices jostle each other while balancing miniature replicas of axes on their heads, or a rat scurries across a hall carrying a shard of mithril, a cheeky commentary on dwarves' obsession with treasure that would elicit an amused smirk from even the most stern of elders. Scholars continue to debate the precise chronology of Thorin's early engagements with rival clans and the creatures lurking in the dark, some insisting that he was propelled by youthful pride, others arguing that a strategic mind long tempered by ancestral wisdom drove his decisions, a question that colors the interpretation of later conflicts and the moral lessons drawn from them. You step alongside Thorin, feeling the rhythmic echo of boots on stone, the subtle vibration of each swing of hammer and axe as he practices maneuvers both ceremonial and practical, the faint scent of metal and smoke lingering in the air, intertwining with the earthy aroma of moss and stone from the mountain itself. The interplay of light and shadow, cast by torches flickering against carved reliefs of long-dead kings and legendary battles, creates a visual narrative that complements the physical choreography of Thorin and his companions. Every movement seems both purposeful and performative, a dance of authority, skill, and history. You catch glimpses of dwarven songs whispered under breath, a mixture of praise, caution, and jest, and you imagine the muted chuckle Thorin might allow himself when hearing a fellow dwarf mispronounce the name of an ancestral weapon. A small moment of levity amid the gravitas of planning and preparation. Forgotten tidbits emerge subtly. Certain battle formations once used in these halls relied on reflective shields and careful torch placement to confuse intruders, techniques rarely recorded in formal histories but preserved in oral tradition. Their effectiveness still argued among modern scholars who reconstruct dwarven tactics for study. The corridors echo with quiet discussions of strategy, the interplay of honor and cunning, and the ever-present specter of greed and betrayal that has haunted Erebor for generations. You sense that Thorin navigates these challenges with a mixture of inherited instinct and learned discipline, balancing the pride of his lineage with the humility required to lead effectively. Outside the halls, the distant murmur of wind through crevices and the occasional cry of a nocturnal creature remind you that danger exists not only within stone walls but in the unpredictable world beyond, a reality that Thorin respects deeply, and you sense the mental agility required to adapt, anticipate, and respond, qualities that distinguish a leader from a mere warrior. You observe how Thorin's companions mirror his movements, subtly adjusting their own techniques, exchanging quiet signals and glances, a network of unspoken communication honed by practice and necessity. Even in the midst of preparation, humor and humanity persist, a wink of camaraderie here, a shared grin at a minor mishap there, softening the intensity of the moment. Scholars debate whether the seemingly casual interplay of jest and rigor in these practices reflects a conscious pedagogical method or merely the natural culture of dwarves raised in such disciplined, high-stakes environments, a debate that lingers over the study of Erebor's martial and social history. The halls themselves, carved with intricate motifs of dragons, mountains, and legendary battles, seem to respond to the movement and sound, each echo amplifying the cadence of training, turning every strike into a percussion of history and story. The interplay of song, movement, and stone creates a living chronicle of dwarven skill, pride, and enduring wit. You feel, walking through this nexus of preparation, that every step, every glance, every muffled laugh contributes to a tapestry of legacy, teaching, and subtle performance, a complex narrative where humor, wisdom, and skill are inseparable, and where Thorin Oakenshield's early mastery of both mind and muscle sets the stage for the challenges and triumphs yet to come. Betrayal in the Golden Halls reveals itself gradually, like the slow seep of light through fissures in stone, as you walk among the glittering treasures of Erebor and sense the tension coiling invisibly between Thorin and those who accompany him. Every coin, every gem seems to hum with memory, reflecting not only the glories of dwarves past, but the shadowed ambitions and whispered doubts that fester beneath polished smiles. You feel the weight of the Arkenstone in Thorin's mind even before it glimmers in reality, a jewel of such brilliance that it draws envy, desire, and subtle treachery, and you catch the faintest tremor of uncertainty in the careful posture of his closest companions, as if they too are caught between loyalty and temptation. Humor flickers amid the tension. A dwarf nervously juggling coins drops one, sending it rolling across the floor with a tiny, accusatory clink, and another mutters an exaggerated oath about the perils of greed, a jest only appreciated by those steeped in dwarven ways, while a rat scurries off with a shiny bauble, perhaps mocking the seriousness of mortal concerns. Scholars debate endlessly the true intentions behind the maneuvers of Thorin's companions at this stage, some insisting that even subtle gestures betray early cracks in alliances, others arguing that the apparent tensions were merely strategic posturing, a necessary element in the complex social dance of dwarves, where honor and cunning are inseparable. You walk beside Thorin as he paces the halls, his expression a careful mask, eyes scanning each flicker of movement, each nuanced shift in posture, reading not just faces but the space between words, the pauses pregnant with meaning, understanding that betrayal often manifests subtly, in hesitation, in diverted gaze, in the faintest alteration of tone. The golden halls shimmer with reflected torchlight, the sparkle of gems and coins painting moving patterns on the walls, and you note how the ambiance itself seems to magnify suspicion, every shimmer a reminder of the fragility of trust, while the lingering smell of heated metal and waxed stone mingles with the earthy scent of distant woods, creating a sensory tapestry of both allure and forewarning. Forgotten tidbits surface. Dwarves historically employed encoded messages within the very layout of treasure, secret markers embedded in stone and gold to convey loyalty or dissent, a practice often overlooked in the annals of Middle-earth, but whispered about in the shadows of study. And you imagine Thorin's keen eye catching such subtleties even as the untrained observer would miss them entirely. The dialogue in these halls is careful, measured, each word chosen to convey both meaning and ambiguity, humor occasionally softening the tension, perhaps a jest at a mislabeled gem or an exaggerated reenactment of a dragon's roar, enough to elicit a brief smirk, yet never enough to undermine the underlying seriousness of the stakes. You feel the pulse of history in each step, aware that the choices made here echo far beyond the immediate halls, alliances forged or broken, loyalties tested, and reputations set on the knife edge of fortune and folly. Scholars argue whether the Arkenstone's influence over Thorin was psychological, a symbol of pride and desire that heightened his sensitivity to perceived disloyalty, or whether its literal presence altered dynamics among companions, an open question in the study of Middle-earth's psychological landscape. As you navigate the corridors, the subtle interplay of light, shadow, sound, and scent immerses you in the delicate balance between camaraderie and suspicion. The faint creak of a floorboard, the shimmer of a gem, even the rustle of a cloak can signal allegiance or deception, and Thorin reads these cues with the practiced eye of both prince and strategist. Humor continues to temper the intensity. A small sparrow, oblivious to the grandeur of the hall, lands atop a pile of coins, bobbing its head in mock seriousness, and you smile at the thought that nature, in its quiet unpredictability, often reminds even the most focused of mortals that levity endures amidst intrigue. The tension coalesces around Thorin, the jewel, and the intricate web of relationships that bind the company, a living tapestry of trust and doubt, honor and temptation, strength and vulnerability. And you understand that these moments define the moral architecture of Erebor as much as any battle, forging lessons that will resonate in legend long after the golden halls have grown silent once more. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every hushed conversation contributes to the narrative, each detail meticulously recorded in memory, in song, in the faint etchings on stone, so that even centuries later, those who study Thorin Oakenshield may glimpse the delicate, often perilous balance between loyalty and ambition that shaped the fate of the mountain and its heirs. The weight of the Arkenstone presses on Thorin as you follow him through the glittering corridors of Erebor, the jewel's light catching in your eyes and reflecting across every polished surface, each facet casting miniature rainbows onto walls lined with ancestral tapestries and banners embroidered with the sigils of Durin's line. You feel the duality of awe and unease as the beauty of the treasure intertwines with the subtle tension that runs through the company, a reminder that pride and desire are often inseparable in the hearts of those who seek glory. The stone itself seems almost sentient, humming faintly in the mind, calling to those attuned to its presence, and you notice Thorin's steps slowing, hands twitching near the hilt of his sword, eyes narrowing in contemplation, while scholars debate whether his fascination is purely symbolic, representing the burden of leadership, or whether the jewel exerts a more literal influence, bending perception and inflaming ambition in ways both magical and psychological. You glimpse Bilbo quietly observing, a mix of anxiety and awe painting his features, aware that every decision Thorin makes in proximity to the Arkenstone carries consequences not only for himself, but for the entire company. You almost hear the rustle of dwarves' whispered speculations, careful not to be overheard, debating which actions are noble, which are prudent, and which might seed betrayal, all while attempting to mask any sign of fear or doubt. Humor flickers through the tension. A dwarf missteps on a polished step, swearing softly while trying to maintain dignity, or a mischievous sparrow lands atop a chest of coins as if asserting dominion over wealth, and Thorin allows a fleeting smirk at such levity, a reminder that even amid obsession, moments of mirth persist. The halls themselves seem to echo with the memory of past decisions, choices carved into stone as surely as any rune, the triumphs and errors of ancestors whispering through the air, and you sense that Thorin internalizes these lessons, balancing reverence with the assertive pride that will define his rule. Forgotten details emerge subtly. The dwarves once used mirrors to amplify the brilliance of certain gems during ceremonies, a technique thought lost but referenced in obscure manuscripts. And you imagine Thorin recalling such practices as a child, fascinated by both the artistry and the utility. absorbing knowledge that informs his current judgments. You move along corridors where torchlight flickers across carvings of dragons and kings, each depiction a lesson in hubris, valor, or folly, the imagery almost seeming to shift as you pass, subtle changes prompting reflection and caution. The interplay of light, shadow, and memory creates an atmosphere where even the most mundane gestures acquire weight, and every glance at the Arkenstone is heavy with expectation. Scholars debate whether Thorin's fixation on the jewel was inevitable, given his lineage and the cultural significance of treasure in Dwarven society, or whether circumstance and personal temperament combined to create a nearly irresistible allure, a question that frames much of the discussion surrounding his later decisions and their tragic consequences. You feel the subtle tension in the air, the almost imperceptible shift in tone among companions as they sense the stone's presence, a quiet wariness threading through conversation and action. Thorin walks with a measured pace, yet the pressure of legacy, ambition, and the jewel itself seems to press upon him like the mountain's weight, shaping thought, emotion, and judgment. Humor and humanity persist amidst the gravity. Perhaps a mouse ventures into the hall, skittering across coin-strewn floors, prompting a quick, light-hearted scolding, or a dwarf tells an exaggerated tale of a goblin who mistook the Arkenstone for a particularly shiny acorn, drawing a brief shared laugh that eases tension while reminding all present that even the smallest folly can carry meaning. The Arkenstone's symbolic and tangible power converges with the personalities around it, shaping interactions, decisions, and perceptions. You see how Thorin navigates this delicate web, balancing pride, duty, and the subtle tug of obsession, aware that every step and gesture resonates far beyond the immediate moment. As you follow, you notice the soft creak of floorboards, the faint clink of metal from distant workshops, and the almost imperceptible hum of air moving through the vast halls, all contributing to an atmosphere thick with anticipation, reflection, and the quiet, almost musical rhythm of Dwarven life intertwined with legend. Scholars continue to debate the precise effect of the Arkenstone on Thorin's moral compass, some arguing that it exacerbated latent traits of pride and stubbornness, others asserting that it merely illuminated pre-existing tendencies, a topic that remains central to interpretations of his character and legacy. The jewel cast its light far and wide, illuminating more than stone and treasure. It reveals the vulnerabilities, ambitions, and subtle strengths of those who dwell within the mountain. And as you move through these corridors, you sense that every heartbeat, glance, and decision contributes to the intricate narrative that defines not only Thorin, but the enduring spirit of Erebor itself. Siege and song unfolds as you step outside the towering gates of Erebor, where the foggy air carries the muted roar of distant armies assembling, the clang of metal and the rhythmic stomp of boots echoing faintly through valleys and over hills, while the scent of damp earth and pine mixes with the metallic tang of weaponry and armor, creating an atmosphere dense with tension and anticipation. Every footfall on the uneven ground sends vibrations through stone and soil alike, a subtle prelude to the conflicts about to unfold, and you feel the pulse of history beating in tandem with your own heartbeat. You notice Thorin pacing deliberately, axe in hand, eyes sweeping over the landscape with the practiced gaze of a leader attuned to both strategy and terrain, while whispers of dwarves' old songs rise and fall like the wind, each note a reminder of ancestral triumphs, near misses, and the moral lessons etched into memory across generations. Humor peeks through the tension in small, almost imperceptible ways. A young dwarf trips over a low branch and recovers with exaggerated grace, prompting a brief, knowing smirk from Thorin, or a raven swoops down to investigate, tilting its head as if questioning the competence of the assembled warriors, a subtle jest that lightens the oppressive weight of impending conflict. Scholars continue to debate the chronology and scale of the forces that gathered around Erebor, some insisting that the numbers recorded in chronicles are inflated, while others argue that the strategic positioning and composition of these armies was meticulously planned, a combination of dwarven cunning and sheer necessity. and you notice how Thorin navigates these calculations with precision, balancing caution and audacity. The air is thick with sound and scent, the soft hum of campfires, the distant bray of oxen, the low murmur of strategists plotting next moves, and the faint, almost imperceptible melody of a lone horn carried by the wind, a song that lifts spirits while marking the tension of anticipation. Every note and echo seems amplified in the cool evening air, carrying both warning and encouragement. Forgotten tidbits surface subtly. Certain defensive formations used by dwarves relied on reflective shields and careful placement of torches to confuse attackers at night, techniques recorded only in obscure manuscripts and debated among scholars for centuries, and you imagine Thorin recalling these lessons, anticipating how they might shift the balance of power before the first arrow is loosed. You observe the interactions among Thorin's companions, glances exchanged, gestures subtle yet laden with meaning, the silent communication honed over shared training and experience, and you feel the delicate balance of loyalty and individual initiative as each participant prepares for the chaos to come. The mountain itself seems to respond to the approaching storm, the stones vibrating subtly underfoot, the distant rumble of the wind through crevices echoing like a warning, and you sense that both terrain and legacy shape every decision. The mountains, the halls, and the treasure they guard are silent participants in this unfolding drama, their presence a constant reminder of what is at stake. Humor and levity continue to thread through the atmosphere. A fox, bold and curious, darts across the road, momentarily distracting a soldier, or a dwarf jests about the appropriateness of using a particular song to boost morale. Small, humanizing moments that remind you of the resilience and adaptability that persist even in the shadow of siege and battle. The subtle layering of sound, the clink of armor, the rustle of leaves, the soft patter of distant rain, intertwines with the cadence of dwarven war chants, creating a tapestry of auditory cues that inform and embolden, while simultaneously amplifying the suspense. Each note, each movement, each whispered command carries weight, shaping perception, morale, and strategy. Scholars debate whether the songs carried into siege were intended purely for morale, or whether they encoded tactical information, a subtle art blending culture, strategy, and magic, and you feel the echoes of such layered meanings resonating as you walk beside Thorin, each decision, glance, and gesture laden with significance. The balance between sound, environment, and human endeavor creates an almost hypnotic rhythm, one that Thorin seems to navigate instinctively, blending knowledge, courage, and intuition as he prepares to face the impending tide. Even the smallest detail, a shifting shadow, a flickering torch, the angle of a branch, can influence perception and prompt immediate action. As the evening deepens, the distant stars cast pale light across the assembled forces, reflecting faintly in the eyes of warriors and in the polished surfaces of weapons, and you sense the convergence of history, legend, and personal stakes, an intricate tapestry in which every individual contributes a thread. Thorin's leadership, tempered by ancestry and sharpened by experience, stands at the nexus of this unfolding moment, guiding actions that will echo far beyond the immediate conflict. The mountains, the winds, the songs, and the stone walls together create a living stage upon which valor, cunning, and occasionally folly play out, and you feel immersed in a scene at once vivid and timeless. Aware that the rhythm of siege, song, and strategy defines not only the immediate outcome, but the enduring legacy of Erebor and its people. Thorin's final decisions weigh heavily upon the mountain as you walk beside him through the dimly lit throne room of Erebor, where torches cast flickering shadows across the polished stone, and the faint scent of smoke and heated metal mingles with the earthy aroma of ancient masonry, creating an atmosphere thick with expectation, history, and the unspoken pressure of legacy. Each step echoes softly, a reminder that every choice carries consequence. Every gesture amplifies both honor and peril, and every glance among companions conveys subtle nuance that Thorin must read with precision. The Arkenstone rests, almost pulsating in his thoughts, a symbol of both unity and division. and you sense the internal conflict as pride, duty, and the pull of ancestral destiny converge, forcing decisions that will shape not only his fate, but the survival of Erebor and all who dwell within. Scholars continue to debate whether Thorin's obsession with the jewel stems from personal ambition, inherited responsibility, or a complex interplay of both, a question that colors every interpretation of his final acts. Humor threads gently through the tension, offering fleeting reprieve. Perhaps a goblin's discarded helmet teeters precariously on a crate, or a dwarf mutters under breath about misplaced ale while adjusting a banner. Small, humanizing moments that contrast with the gravity of leadership, and you notice Thorin's fleeting smirk as if acknowledging life's persistence even amid solemnity. You observe the subtle choreography of movement and decision, companions adjusting armor, checking weapons, exchanging almost imperceptible signals, a network of trust and awareness honed over shared trials and whispered lessons. Each action is deliberate, weighed against consequence, yet softened by instinct, camaraderie, and shared history. The weight of memory presses upon the stone walls, each carving and tapestry a silent witness to triumph and folly, victories and missteps, their presence magnifying the stakes of every choice made here, while distant echoes of Dwarven songs rise and fall like breaths of the mountain itself, blending melancholy, anticipation, and quiet pride into a living soundtrack of leadership tested and destiny approached. Forgotten details emerge subtly. The throne room was originally constructed with acoustic intention, allowing whispers to carry in certain directions and mask others, a tactical choice rarely noted in chronicles but debated among historians of Dwarven architecture. And you imagine Thorin recalling such lessons as he navigates both spoken counsel and unspoken expectation. Outside, the soft clamor of lingering allies, the muted movement of servants, and the subtle creak of the mountain settling under its own weight create an ambient score, heightening the tension while reminding you that Erebor is alive in both physical and historical senses, responding imperceptibly to every human action within its walls. Scholars continue to discuss the moral calculus Thorin employs, whether driven by loyalty, honor, or necessity, and how his choices exemplify the intersection of personal desire and the collective good, a nuanced consideration often overshadowed by tales of gold and glory. Walking beside him, you feel the gravity of such evaluation, each breath a study in consequence, each heartbeat a measure of responsibility. Humor persists in small, humanizing details. A sparrow lands atop a gilded chest, pecking lightly at crumbs, a reminder of ordinary life persisting amid extraordinary stakes, or a dwarf fumbles with a cloak, eliciting a quiet chuckle, moments that anchor even the weightiest decisions in the familiar, comforting rhythms of living beings. You see Thorin consulting companions, gestures subtle yet commanding, eyes scanning for both loyalty and hesitation, words chosen for meaning and discretion, balancing firmness and diplomacy, authority and empathy, a masterclass in leadership under duress. Each choice reverberates through the hall, influencing morale, action, and the unfolding sequence of events. The mountain itself seems to pulse with history and expectation, a silent partner in the dance of decision-making, reinforcing the gravity of action while offering the quiet counsel of endurance, patience, and perspective. As you trace each decision, each glance, each hesitation, you perceive the intertwining of legend, responsibility, and personal conviction, a delicate tapestry where pride, wisdom, and courage converge. Thorin Oakenshield's final choices crystallize not in isolation but through interplay with his companions, the environment, and the enduring legacy of his line, a living narrative woven into the very stones and shadows of Erebor, shaping both present outcomes and enduring memory. Erebor's quiet aftermath stretches before you like a living tapestry of silvered stone, fading embers, and distant starlight, where the heavy toll of battles fought and decisions made settles gently into the architecture of the mountain, leaving both silence and reflection in its wake. Each corridor, each chamber, breathes softly, carrying the faint aroma of spent torches, warmed stone, and the lingering scent of metal and earth, a reminder of the toil and triumphs that have shaped this place. And you walk slowly, absorbing the resonance of history, the subtle cadence of lives intertwined with legend. Thorin's presence lingers in every shadow, every glint of polished metal, as his final acts leave traces of wisdom, courage, and, inevitably, loss. You notice the careful attention of companions tidying the halls, exchanging quiet words, soft laughter punctuating the solemnity, and a reverent pause before treasured relics, as if acknowledging the weight of legacy they inherit. Outside, the river flows with a gentle murmur, silver ribbons weaving through the darkness, reflecting stars and moonlight, creating a rhythm both calming and eternal, while distant forests sway in muted agreement with the quiet pulse of the mountain, whispering stories of vigilance, resilience, and quiet endurance. Forgotten details surface like hidden gems. A small bird perched on a battlement, singing softly despite the scars of siege, or the faint glow of phosphorescent moss along tunnels once used for defense. Subtle signs of life and persistence that remind you the world continues beyond the immediacy of human concern, even amidst grandeur and ruin. Humor threads lightly through the reverence. Perhaps a dwarf adjusts a crooked banner with exaggerated solemnity, or a cat slinks past a pile of coins with a regal flick of its tail, moments that bring warmth and humanity to the monumental quiet. Scholars continue to debate the long-term effects of Thorin's decisions on both Erebor's culture and broader Dwarven society, weighing the moral and strategic consequences while you walk through halls that now feel suspended in a delicate balance between memory and possibility. The weight of history softened by twilight and reflection. The stars overhead glimmer like distant watchful eyes, and you sense that even as Erebor breathes, the narrative of its people, their trials, triumphs, and occasional folly, continues in quiet motion, echoing through corridors, tunnels, and the distant mountains beyond. As the embers fade to soft, glowing ash, you pause at the highest balcony, observing the expanse of forest, hills, and silvered river stretching into the night, and a sense of peace settles in your chest, a gentle acknowledgement of endurance, courage, and the impermanence of both conflict and celebration. The mountain hums faintly beneath your feet, a rhythm almost imperceptible, harmonizing with the distant song of flowing water, the subtle sigh of wind in treetops, and the soft murmur of companions settling for rest. You feel the mountain's pulse, a quiet continuity, a lullaby of stone and memory, soothing both body and mind. In this stillness, reflections arise. Choices once urgent, now softened by time. Actions once fraught, now tempered by perspective. And every stone, torch, and echo seems to whisper lessons in patience, humility, and the enduring spirit of those who came before. Humor lingers in memory, subtle and gentle. The image of a squirrel stealing a shiny coin, the recollection of a dwarf's exaggerated boast, the quiet chuckle Thorin allowed himself at small, human follies, moments that soften the harshness of history and remind you that life, in all its gravity, retains spaces for warmth, levity, and shared experience. As the night deepens, the river's silver ribbon meanders toward distant valleys. The starlight glimmers faintly on its surface, and the soft hiss of a dying campfire sends gentle sparks upward, each a tiny testament to persistence, transformation, and memory. You breathe deeply, letting the rhythm of the mountain, water, and stars guide your mind toward calm, your senses absorbing the textures, scents, and sounds that define this quiet aftermath. Finally, you allow yourself to linger in the peaceful cadence of Erebor at rest, knowing that the mountain, the companions, and the legacy of Thorin Oakenshield endure not only in stone and story, but in the subtle resonance of every whispered memory, every reflected starlight, and the ongoing melody of life beneath the vast, eternal sky.